Hello and welcome. Welcome, colleagues worldwide joining us for this webinar. We're going to talk about digital citizen surveys for data-driven municipal decision-making and municipal service improvement. A webinar organized by VNG International, but meant also for our partners outside of VNG. And we will have contributions of Niels Rijmink, our associated expert, Judith Geerling, our regional manager for Europe, Asia, and Latin America, as well as Irene Oostveen, our business development manager or specialist. And we will be sharing experiences also to increase our awareness about digitalization and the use of data. There's already a lot happening in our projects, and we will showcase some of that today. And there's also still a lot to learn. So we hope that this webinar will kick off more discussions. And that's also why you can use the chat for any questions that you have during the webinar. And I'll just briefly, my name, by the way, is Karim Boussak, Regional Manager for East and Southern Africa for VNG International. And I'm briefly going to introduce the webinar. We'll go into the core digital values of VNG International, talk about the data process, and go into more details about transparency, as well as, oh, nice background, as well as have a bit more discussion about how we can use it in our day-to-day work or projects. Collecting data is already part of our projects. That's what I mentioned. And our aim of this webinar also is how can we translate this data in more digital forms so that we can be more efficient and effective in our projects, and also to be able to visualize better how and what we do in our work. When we talk about data, we identified three forms within the data landscape. We talk about citizens, land, and property. Today, the webinar will focus on the first, citizens. And we will have webinars on the other two items as well, land and property. So be sure to follow that as well. Just briefly for our colleagues outside of VNG International who don't know us yet, VNG International is the International Cooperation Agency of VNG, the Dutch Municipal Association. And we have 60 staff members in The Hague, as well as an expert network with associated experts like Niels, and also more international experts in our pool of experts. I briefly mentioned VNG, the Dutch Association of Municipalities. All municipalities in the Netherlands are a member of this association, and VNG International is the international, we're executing projects worldwide with project offices in where you can see the list, Benin, DRC, etc. But we also have a daughter company in Tunis, as well as a training institute linked to VNG International, the Hague Academy for Local Governments. As well as we're active in a lot of international platforms that you can see in this slide as well. We're active currently in 42 countries with a turnover about 30 million euros. And we have several fields of expertise. And as you can imagine, in each of these fields, digitalization is relevant. It's about digital governance. It's about e-services, technology, use of apps. So when it comes to governance, we talk about responsible use of data. We talk about ethics, inequality, data-driven decision-making, transparency, and accountability. A lot of aspects that come within our projects and the data that we use in those projects. But digitalization is also about packaging it in a way that we have products or services that we can use in our projects. In that sense, we talk about dashboards or citizen service offices, and as well as apps. Now, like I said, today we will focus on citizens, and in particular also social accountability. But before we go into that specific part, we also want to introduce how we look at the digitalization within our projects and when we talk with municipalities. A lot of our work is about how citizen perceptions or needs of citizens are translated by a municipality to increase or improve the services that they deliver. So here we also see, I think an important part of data and the digitalization of data. So digitalization of data can be mapping of priorities of citizens, can be surveying, and that feeds in more informed decision making. Our second aspect in this slide. Here we talk about having multiple departments working together to make sure that the decisions that they take to improve services are rooted in the data and the collected data that we all have. Then we talk about service provision, and here you can see that we try also to build on citizen initiatives, working in partnership between municipalities and citizens to improve those services and also to monitor the quality of those services. When we talk about digitalization, it's also about having different building blocks. From bottom to up, we will say, when we have a project, we want to do maybe data collection. Here we can have an app for surveying. We'll talk about that more today. The dashboard that you can use to visualize that data, it's also a matter of sharing. And that feeds also into the portal where we want to engage citizens and have a bit more interaction between citizen and municipality, which also feeds into the transparency and accountability objective. And then we also want to present here our digital values. These are VNG International's developed digital values based also on digital values from the VNG as well as the UN. And as you can see here, we focus on do no harm, data or digitalization should have added value, the data should be accessible and be built within a safe infrastructure, which also relates to the data permissions, where we'll look in who should have access to which data, but still being transparent, so transparency first, as well as having all parties that should have access to this data connected to it. I think I'll leave it at this point, and I want to give the word to our associate expert, Niels Rijmink, to share some of his experiences and our work that he's done throughout the years for us. Welcome, Niels.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
All right.
Very good. And I will take it from here. As Karim said, I will take you a bit more into the content of data collection and municipal decision making. We've cut this process into a couple of steps. So these are the 5 steps that we've included in the data collection and the municipal decision making and service improvement. So the first step is actually an offline step. It's developing a priority framework. And before I go further into that, it's good to state that when we talk about citizen data, we're talking in this process about priorities to be specific. So it's not about first name, last name, civil status, but it's on the priorities of the citizens. And I have a sheet on that to go a bit further into the priorities. Once we have set what we would like to collect, we can actually collect the data into the field. And once this data has been collected, we will analyze the results, which we do in Microsoft Power BI, on which I also have some sheets. Now, data collection and the visualization of this is only a tool, and it is a tool that should be used to create a dialogue between the citizens and the local government to improve on service delivery. Now, after, due to a dialogue, the projects have been established, there is an improvement cycle which goes to the executing of the projects and making sure that these projects are executed as they should, leading to the improved municipal service delivery. Now, to start with the offline process of a priority framework. What is a priority framework? The priority framework is what we're going to measure. You could also see it as a research framework. And it's a layered framework that enables drilling down to the core of issues. So we go from top to bottom. This allows for consistency over multi-year projects, if you want to repeat the research or the data collection. And it has been established over many years of doing these projects, even before we did digital data collection. It is not in concrete, it's also adjustable to the local situation. And it's an open framework. As Karim said, one of our core values is that we share, and this framework is open for sharing, so other projects are free to use it. Now, I hope that this example above will give a bit more insights. What you will see to the top are the sectors. So these are the sectors in which we measure priorities. And for example, here we have the education in the middle, and to the left of that, the health sector. And these are the core sectors where we measure citizen priorities. And then we have focus areas underneath them, saying when we speak of education, we look at access to school, for example, or another focus area could be teachers. Now, and under that level, we have the priorities. And when looking at teachers again, it could be a priority of citizens. Hey, we value education, and we find it important that teachers are available, or teachers might be available, but it's our priority that their behavior is changing because there's an issue with the behavior towards the students. So this is a brief example of a priority framework that we use in our projects to collect data, and that enables for consistency. In order to capture this data, we also have something that we call a cheat sheet. Again, this is a full offline tool, but when you collect data, you want to make sure that you collect the right data. So when interviewing people, you need to be able to explain them what you are measuring. And therefore, we have this offline sheet, which gives you examples of all the sectors and the focus areas we have. You can drill that down, you work it out together with the people that you're interviewing, and they have a clear example, so they know what you're choosing. So this is a great tool that helps you to improve on data quality, because it makes very clear what are the options for the people to choose from. It reduces the risks of errors, and it also improves the quality. Now, once there's a priority framework established and we have the cheat sheets, we can go to the field and we can collect the actual data. Now, where I spoke before of offline tools, this is a fully, well, the data collection itself is offline, it's fully paperless. And for this tool is used that is called Kobo Toolbox. It's the tool of preference. And this is a data collection tool that has been developed in partnership with, amongst others, UNHCR, UNOCHA, and the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. And it's a professional organization that offers a robust tool for offline data collection. So there's no need to have an internet connection in the field. You can go into the field. It works on nearly all devices, all Android devices from version 1 on. You collect the data, and the moment you get back into the field, you upload, or into the office, you upload the data. The data is then securely stored in one of the data centers that is managed also by UNOCHA or by the Kobo initiative. And the tool looks something like this. So very basic, easy to understand, and you have here 3 screens where you have the questions where people can easily swipe through, and there's an option of pick list, multiple choice, select multiple. Various kind of questions can be integrated into this tool that is used for data collection, either on a tablet or on a telephone. Now, assuming we have collected the data, it is about analyzing the results. And for a reference project that I will talk about in a bit in Ethiopia, we have data of over 60,000 households, which is a lot. And if you need to analyze that manually, that is undoable. So there we need additional tools to analyze the results of the data collection we have. We do this in an online dashboard, and these dashboards are made by Microsoft Power BI, where the data is reflected almost instantly. I told you before that we collect data offline in the field. Of course, you need first to the office where the data is uploaded. But if you then upload the data within 2 hours, it's reflected on the dashboard. I want to pause here a little bit and talk why we use the Microsoft Power BI. First of all, it's a leading platform and it is proven technology, but there's also an abundance of learning materials, free learning materials available. So as VNG International, we always want to put the local parties, give them the control. And the local teams, they can learn to work with this tool. You don't need advanced or expensive training to master this tool. It's just freely available. Advantage of working with such a tool is there's little to none of data cleaning, and there's a uniform reporting standard within your project. And I think this is how such a dashboard would look like. Again, this is the dashboard we use for the Ethiopia Social Accountability Project, where we interviewed over 60,000 households. And what you can see here is that we've collected the priorities of all these citizens, but we have summed them up or aggregated them into the top 10 priorities here, where you can see what are the top 10 priorities. They're a bit too small for me to see, but examples would be access to clean water, electricity, these kinds of priorities. Besides the data on the priorities, of course, we have some basic information on the household information. What is your status? What is your primary source of income? And we can use that to filter the dashboards dynamically, or maybe to get an insight in the priorities of people that have a disability to drill down on their specific priorities. Now, I've spoken about data quality before. A second tool we use, or a second method we use, is we monitor the enumerators. And it is inevitable that if you collect data with 60,000 households, you can't do it by yourself. So we have multiple partners we work with to collect this data. And there is a difference between the quality of work that gets delivered by these implementing partners. So we use also Microsoft Power BI to actively steer the data collection activity, and we monitor the performance of these enumerators. So we have done a test run, and we know that a survey should last about 15 minutes. And if we see after days of work that the average survey is only 4 or 5 minutes, then we know that we have to intervene and explain to people better how to go about the interviews. So we ensure we have a data quality, and any data that doesn't meet our requirements is dismissed. So we also have a higher quality of data. And this is the last example where we can see how we do the monitoring. We can see here the data points of data that we have collected, in this case in Addis Ababa. And you can see that all the fields here are green. And for me, I can't read them. The screen is a bit too far, but here we have information on the GPS accuracy, how many priorities were given, and we see the enumerator that has performed the interview. Now, if there would be something off with this data, the dot would get a different color, and it would indicate why there's an issue with this data, and we can intervene. Once again, an example on how we work on ensuring data quality. Now, then I mentioned before that the data collection is only a tool that we use to create a dialogue. And this dialogue should lead to service improvement for citizens. So we use this tool, it gets in a report, and there's data added to the report, maybe some case examples. And then the report is part of a discussion that is between the citizens and between the local government with the idea to improve on this. So we have then the hardcore evidence saying, hey, these are the priorities of citizens. How can we best go about it to together come to improve service delivery? And we try to identify the solvable issues, and we have a good look at what is possible and what isn't possible. So sometimes we identify priorities like there's need for a hospital. Well, this is not something that is doable for every municipality. So there we try to pick the priorities that are doable and that are solvable within the context of the projects we do. The goal of this is to include this all into the projects of the municipality and in the planning and budget cycle to make sure that there's a follow-up to the priorities as we have identified them during the data collection. This process is overseen by the citizen committee. So there are interventions with the municipality and the parties that do the service delivery, like maybe the electricity company or the waste management company. But we also include a citizens committee in this social accountability process. And it's their task to see that action is first being taken, but it's also taken in a good way and that there's actually a follow-up. We try to create a diverse group of people so that all interests are being covered within this group, and they're checking on the local government, but they're also a binding factor between the government, citizen structures, and service providers. And I think this is a very valuable tool that where citizens, in many situations we work in, there's just not many resources available. And people don't always understand that, have that understanding from each other. But by bringing them together, a citizen committee, they talk to the municipality, to the service delivery, and they talk about the problems they're facing together. And that even the service delivery organization might not have the tools to do a better job. And if this comes to a better understanding with the citizens, that's also of added value. But of course, they are there also to check on the local government, hence the term social accountability, where the local government is accountable for the services they deliver. Now, to the improve cycle. After the social accountability committee, service providers and local government have established the projects are being executed, and there's an improvement cycle that we work with the PDCA cycle. Maybe it's known to some, the plan, do, check cycle, to make sure these projects are executed in a proper way. This is usually with VNG projects, it's a combination of both citizen and government projects. So in many cases, they're projects that can be done by the citizens themselves. If we talk about waste disposal or maybe fixing a basic lighting, these are things that can also be done by the citizens themselves, maybe in some kind of a committee. So it's not only focusing on what can the local or what should the local government do, but we also look at what can citizens themselves do to add to better living environment. Now, for both projects, it counts that these are included in the municipal investment planning and budget cycle. We need the projects that we identify to go into that cycle, so they're really executed and followed up upon, and the project manager is assigned by the local municipality. Needless to say, these need to be feasible action plans with clear deliverables, so we can actually follow up on them. Again, the social accountability or the citizen committee is monitoring that these action plans are delivered, but also on the follow-up or on execution of them. Here we have some examples of municipal services improvements. So these are examples of how the municipality themselves did improvements after we did data collection with citizens. So we have the improving of the stormwater drainage. If the data collection leads to the situation that we say the stormwater drainage needs improvement, it's an issue to us, then there's of course a task that is with the municipality, and they can execute a project on that. The same goes for waste management improvement. Once again, that could also be a citizen project where citizens set up an initiative to do this themselves. But in this scenario, there are also scenarios where it is done by the local municipality themselves. Some other examples are the extermination of mosquitoes or improving public lighting. And then citizen initiatives. And I find these just as important, once again, because we, VNG International, understand the situation that local government abroad is in, and they don't always have the means to provide those services. So citizen initiatives are definitely as important. Just some basic examples that we have seen in our past projects on citizen initiatives. Citizens started to participate in cleaning their houses together, which adds to, of course, the public health. Making community gardens, another very good example of things you can do without the help of the municipality, but it does improve your living environment. There's also awareness. Children can motivate their parents to start recycling waste instead of throwing it around and littering. Even better, communities started to make new products out of plastic waste. You might have seen them, the bags that are made of recycled plastic bottles and then being sold to hopefully tourists or other people. We notice in our data collection that road security is a big topic within our projects. There are many accidents happening on the roads, and initiatives to make the road more safe are also something, a perfect example of citizen initiatives. You can make signs yourself. There's also awareness creation there. And last, of course, neighborhood watch, citizen initiatives. We see them a lot in the Netherlands. You see the WhatsApp groups with the signs. Also in other countries you have it. If the community is on a WhatsApp group together, security issues might be shared on that. And with a little bit of facilitating, you can really set up a neighborhood watch. Then transparency, and this is one of the digital values that Karim mentioned before. But we try to, or we use this actually throughout the project and also in the following of our implementing partners and the people we work with. And we inform citizens every step along the process of the data collection and how this data is being used. First of all, there's also internal transparency. And the example you see here is once again, the example of the Ethiopia Social Accountability Project. And this is what we use to monitor our implementing partners. So we do not directly work with the municipalities in Ethiopia. We have something called like implementing partners, and they do activities for us, amongst which is the data collection. But we need to keep track of the exact whereabouts of these and activities they have executed of these implementing partners. And this is something we track in this portal you see here, where we track the progress of all the IPs, but we can also zoom into to a specific IP to see where he is within the social accountability progress. So also here, we try to use to maximize digitalization. We also have the public portal. So once we have a project where data has been collected, we use this, of course, internally to facilitate the dialogue between service delivery, the citizen, the group of citizens. But we also publish the data on a public portal where it's made available for maybe other NGOs that want to do projects, but also for the citizens. So we don't want to keep this data only to ourselves, but we want to share, again, the feedback to the people, because if you talk about social accountability, if you collect data from the people, they should have an insight in their data and also keep the local government accountable, even if they're not in the citizens committee. But by making this data available for everyone, they can keep their local government accountable for that. What we share here is project timelines, the survey results, but also how people can contribute. If there's a local project, it is stated on this website, and people can sign up to then join this project. I just mentioned NGOs. This is also an important one. We share with other NGOs like VNG International because we think this data has very valuable information. We have information on the priorities of 60,000 Ethiopian households. If there are other NGOs that want to do a project and they're not sure where they can add most value, whether it be in wash sector, education, or maybe rural roads, we have this data and we share it so people can see where the priorities are highest and what kind of projects would really have an impact. These are all available on the public portal. Again, this goes to I see a question popping up. I will get there in a bit. Then the data sharing, I mentioned before, this goes actually to the public portal we mentioned. We shared with the local government. It's, in the end, working together with local government, their data, but also just with the other parties, non-governmental development sector parties. And I think it's good to state that we, of course, have a look at the data, what we are sharing. So we make sure that it's safe for the people to share this data. Even in the interview, we ask, for example, we wouldn't ask this directly, but the opinion on service delivery by the municipality is asked by a person. He might not be that satisfied. And you don't want to share the information, of course, with the geolocation of this person's house. So really make sure that first principle, do no harm, that the data is safe to share. But for example, on our portal, the data is aggregated on a higher level and we can give an insight to the priorities within a specific municipality without giving the priorities of a specific person. Where can we see the information you share online or the public portal? I think we have a mailing list, and I will be happy to share this location of the public portal after this webinar with all the participants. And I think my last sheet, the social media diagram. We of course have our own portal, but there are also very active networks within the different kinds of social media as well. What we try to do is also on these social media methods, we share the information on our program. So we update people, let's say on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram, whatever. Hey, the Social Accountability Project has made this and this progress. If you want to find more, if you want to have more information, please have a look at our portal. So really try to tap into the existing networks that are usually already very active, and we don't have to build our own community before we can share with any of the citizens. I think that's it from my part. If there are questions still, I will have a look at the chat now, but I will first give the word to Judith, and then afterwards I can answer some of the questions. But I see there's coming now. How do you bring the data from offline platform to dashboard? Is it manually? Very good question, and I'm actually happy that you ask it. No, this is completely automated. So I mentioned that I'm very much a fan of the Kobo Toolbox tool. And what it offers an API function. And this is maybe a bit technical, but it means as much that we have the Power BI and we have Kobo. Kobo, of course, contains the data. And there is a standard link available. So we can make, in a secure way, make these applications talk to each other. And we can then say, Microsoft Power BI, hey, 6 times a day or to a maximum of 8 times a day, copy all the data that has been updated from Kobo Toolbox and put it in your dashboards. So within the Ethiopia Social Accountability Project, we do this overnight. And if data has been collected, you don't have to do anything. The next day, you will refresh your dashboard and the newest survey data will be reflected in this dashboard. Since I'm still talking, I will postpone you a little bit and see this next question. What's the size of sample per survey usually? Okay, the question here is, do you have an aim? Do you aim to have a representative sample of the general population, and how do you ensure that? What's the size of sample per survey usually? Well, I must admit that I'm not a statistician, but in many or actually all of the projects I work, there is. So I know for the Ethiopia Social Accountability Project, this has been set to 198 people within 3 different zones within the municipality. And there has been a statistic calculation made for that. It's not always possible to, our statisticians have a look at that. And in some situations, it might be very difficult to get that. Working in rural areas, for example, it's even hard getting to the field. So it depends on the situation, but yes, we definitely have a look at that. And of course, if we collect data, it needs to be representative to some, not to some extent, but it needs to be representative. But I know that in not every scenario, if you want to do a PhD on this or academic purposes, yeah, it might not have the size of that, but it's very much depending on the situation. Do you need to secure ethical approval permits in the countries, or how do you go about with this? Yes, definitely. There is, again, we take always the values that Karim said in the beginning, and I think the most important one is really the do no harm. And doing no harm also means that you respect any ethical questions. So if it's, for example, for people hard to ask about their disabilities, you might not want to go into those details. And I know that we have inclusion experts on board on VNG International. And we have gender experts and people that I am not the one, I can make a priority framework, but I'm not the one, of course, approving this or making this all by myself. And we have our colleagues looking at this. Is this acceptable in the context where we start doing the data collection? And we always work with our local partners, and the local partners provide someone who can state something on this to make sure that what we ask is ethically approved and correct. I think that's it. Then Judith, please take the stand.
Thanks a lot, Niels, for your explanation, actually, also. You see on the slide a couple of examples of experience that we have as VNG International on this topic already. And I just wanted to also give you one other example from our program in Lebanon and Iraq that we just finished last year, Maintaining Strength and Resilience for Local Governments program. Because we actually used, in 2 instances, also data collection in a digital way, kind of without knowing that we were doing that, or without intentionally collecting things in a digital way. First of all, we did data collection for our GIS units that we set up in the municipalities in the areas where we worked in Lebanon and Iraq. And we used Kobo as well, actually, to collect some of the data there on where the waste containers were, where the water points are, all these, very basic information things, but we also collected them actually digitally and used them in the GIS system and added them to the maps. So the municipality could actually use that information. And the other example is in our monitoring and evaluation framework. We also made use of a statistically sample size to find out about changes in the service delivery and the results of our project. So we actually, without intentionally focusing on data collection or digitalization within our project, already made use of some of the elements that Niels described. And I think in a lot of the things that we're working on, these examples actually exist. So we hope to give you a bit of a better framework of how we can maybe do that and some of the support that we actually already have available there. And I'll just give the floor to Irene, my colleague, to do some closing remarks, but also maybe see with some of the questions that are left.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Judith, and my colleagues before this. Yes, indeed, I wanted to share with you the message that Judith shared last. And we are all managing data in our projects, and data is very important for local governments. So this webinar is mainly also with the purpose of convincing you that you already work with data and making you conscious that you do that, and that we have a lot of tools available to make that more effective for decision making at municipal level and effective for service delivery. That is why we thought it is very important to share this knowledge with you. We have done this already for many years with paper. We still do it with paper, but I think we have now access to very nice tools. There are some questions about the tools also. I see a question on the language skills of Microsoft Power BI. They are very ample. So I believe there are many languages in which you can use Power BI. That is why it's a strong tool and easily accessible for many countries. Of course, if there are countries where Microsoft Power BI is not the preferred tool, we can look into that as well together. I think we have gained some experiences with others as well. The cost of running the program, that's another question about the money. Well, actually, you just asked the same question when we were discussing this. Do we now have a framework for all of our colleagues to make a budget for what you want to do? And I believe we heard Niels say that he did this data collection with over 30,000 households in Ethiopia. I know projects where we do that with much less. So there are budgets, I think, from small to big, and this is in Ethiopia. It's a World Bank finance program. I believe there is a budget over 15 million of US dollars, maybe even higher. And for many years, this was an investment of the Ethiopian government in this program. But of course, that is not the normal, let's say, right? That is one of our programs in the portfolio, and in other countries we manage projects with a much lower budget, and still you can do a lot with the data that you collect in your programs there. In one municipality, you can already start, and a municipality can also vary from, let's say, 1,000 inhabitants to 300,000 or a million. So let's get back to that. If you have a nice idea, a very nice suggestion, a good comment, anything you want to talk about digitalization, data, please contact us. I think this is a start for us to have this conversation. There are many colleagues trained now in this topic, so they can discuss this further with you. You saw some nice visualizations, so it is attractive. I know people go for the visuals. It's very easy readable. Follow our next webinars. You will receive invitations for that on land data, for example, and that we use worldwide in cadastre services where citizens also play a role. So it's not only then about the maps and the geographic information points, but of course a combination of data is possible as well. And many years of experience with property data, so buildings, mainly for tax programs, so the municipal income programs, where citizens also have a say. So it's most of the time it's not exclusive perspective that we then have on data. So if there are no further questions, I would like to thank you very much Yeah, there was one? No, I don't believe so. Yes, I want to thank you very much for listening to this webinar. And please get in contact with us if you have any good idea on where you can apply this. A lot of context with a lack of data, where easy collection of data can bring you much further. So think in data, and let's be in touch. Thank you very much.